That's historical fact. Look at the Spanish Inquisition, one of the most recent ones, right? Again, not a slight against the Christian faith, but you can't deny that religion has been used to exploit many different people over the history of humanity. And I know it's not exclusive to Christianity. There's a lot of different religions which this happens to. We're seeing it even today with certain religions out in the Middle East, where they unfortunately brainwash them into believing where they can make a tremendous sacrifice and that they'll be rewarded in paradise for such heinous acts. Beyond me. However, as always, share your thoughts in the comments below, but let's keep it civil. We're all adults here, we're all humans, so we already have that common ground. Let's just build from that. Share knowledge, share insight, no need for aggression. Let's expand our awareness, expand our consciousness, and really try and find out what the truth is. But with that being said, we've reached the end of the video now. I hope you enjoyed the clips. If you did, drop a like on the video and subscribe for future content. I post every single day at 8 PM UK time. And if you haven't already done so, please join our Discord server. You can find the link in the video description. But for now, stay well, stay safe, and stay curious. Until next time.